Here at Building Together, we love the modular buildings, so much so that I oftentimes look for other non-modular sets to modularize. And of course, when I start thinking about that out loud, my youngest daughter likes to roll her eyes. Now, one potential modular renovation in 2025 comes from the Friends line, that is the Heartlake City apartments and stores. Now, this is a 2,000-piece behemoth of a set, one of the largest ever in the Friends line, and I'm curious to think about how this might be modularized. What would it take? What would it look like? How would the process work? So I'm going to break that down in this video. Before we dive too deeply into the intricacies of the set though, I do want to outline 3 different requirements in order for a building to be considered modular. The first is compatibility. You have to have Technic pins between the 10th and 11th studs, both from the front and back of the set. You have to have it on the base plate. You can't just have it on regular plates unless you put it on mills, which is a whole separate thing. You also need to make sure that you have sidewalk space, and finally, you can't have any part of the set or buildings overhang the edges of the set, because then it's going to run into conflict when you try to put other buildings next to it. The second requirement is that it has to be fully enclosed. It has to be 4 walls, or it has to be something that allows you to have a fully fledged and developed building. And the third one is that it has to have nice detailing on the exterior facade. The sides and back don't matter all that much. Many people use the modulars as display pieces, and even if you have a modular city, the backs might be in an alleyway, and we know plenty of actual modular buildings that don't have highly detailed back walls. So really, I want detail on the front. With that established, what makes the Heartlake City apartments and stores a potential candidate for modularization? After all, not every set can be modularized. So I think there's some unique elements to this set that will allow us to contemplate modularization. This set is part of a modular line within the Friends theme, including the Main Street, Downtown Flower design stores, and more. One reason that this set jumped out to me is that we modularized the flower and design stores from 2 years ago and really loved the final product. There's some other interesting characteristics of the set. First, that it has over 2,000 pieces, many of which are tiles, modified bricks, and modified plates that allow you to get some of those details that you might want in a modular building. The second is that it has significant length. It's 46 studs long, so it's going to have potential for modularity instead of taking something that's 8, 10, or 12 studs wide and trying to convert that into a 16 or 32 wide building. And finally, it has some height to it. Looking at the pictures, it's over 30 bricks tall, which is on par with modular buildings, including 2025's Tudor Corner. Taken together, this suggests that there is some potential for modularizing this set. Now let's examine how it works with the 3 requirements we established and which changes we're going to have to make. In terms of compatibility, one of the first things you're going to have to consider is how to transfer this from regular plates to base plates. Even if you are working on a Mills system, you're still locked in to what base plates are in terms of dimensions, typically 32 studs or 16 studs wide. This transferring to base plates isn't too complicated, but it is an added cost. The biggest issue here is the set dimensions. Actually, at 46 studs wide, you're going to have to adjust the length to match up with a 16 or 32 wide base plate. My recommendation is to use a 32 by 32 base plate with a 16 by 32 base plate to make a 48 wide modular. This would be similar to the X Mansion or the Natural History Museum in terms of length. The challenge with this is deciding where you're going to add those 2 studs. Now, somebody who's modularized sets before, I can tell you that these kinds of decisions have downstream effects on your ability to execute the set. So for instance, if you were to add 2 studs in width to any one of the buildings, it's going to require you to add more pieces from your collection in terms of the walls, as well as the plates and roofing techniques. That's all going to have to change as part of this. My thoughts on this would be to add the 2 studs to the park. On either side of the statue or fountain, you have maybe a little bit of room to work with. You could still bracket the park with the wall and the trees. You just have more room to customize it to your specifications. The other compatibility requirements are the usual for a friend's modular. You'll have to add tiles and jumper plates to expand the sidewalk, as about half the set only has 2 to 3 studs of sidewalk depth, and the other half is about 5 to 6. That's not too bad, especially if you already have the pieces to do this in your collection, or a small bricklink order would be able to suffice. The set already comes with Technic bricks that enable you to connect this to other modular buildings. The 1x8 Technic bricks included aren't long enough to account for each connection you need, but you can either add a 1x4 Technic brick next to that 1x8 Technic brick, or you can just substitute 1x2 Technic bricks to standardize this to your other modulars. Honestly, this part won't be seen in your city, so you have some options here and it's not too hard to overcome that. Finally, there is nothing overhanging the sides of the set, meaning it would line up flush with any other modular building, unlike, say, the Ninjago City docks or even the Ninjago City markets, which actually have a little bit of overhanging in some spots. So in terms of compatibility, so far this set has potential. What about the other ones, especially the next requirement? The apartments and stores set is not fully enclosed, which shouldn't be a surprise, right? None of the friend sets are fully enclosed, and usually your system-based themes aren't going to have 4 walls. So this is where we're going to have to make some key decisions in terms of how you want to modularize this. Some of those decisions include how deep do you want the building to be? What colors do you want to build in and supplement with your collection, especially along the sides and backs, which might not be seen all that much by people looking at a display shelf or even in a modular city when the focus is on the front. For this set, the bright colors included pose 2 problems to me. The first one is that you might not like the colors all that much for whatever reason. Personally, I'm not a huge fan of the colors. They're just not my style, nor do they fit in all that well with my city. Now, I know some of you might say, well, what about the flower and design stores that you modularized a couple years ago? Well, that was different. The bright light orange, the green, and the yellow of the flower store weren't too gaudy, and the design store had a lot of black and light blue, which are reasonable colors for a building. In this set, the mint green, the pink, and fleshy colors here, not so much. Second, if you keep with these colors, you're going to have to add a lot of pieces in those colors from your collection, and they may not be all that common in the pieces you have for building mocks. And that's going to require you to pour in additional resources in order to make this set a modular building. So how can we solve these problems? One possible solution is to buy 2 copies of the set. Kind of think about putting them back to back, almost like you sandwich them together. The benefit of this is you do get extra pieces in the colors that you need. The bad news is that you end up with the windows and the facades on the front, on the back side of the building, and you might have a lot of extra pieces. Having purchased 2 copies of the Downtown Flower and Design stores from 2 years ago, I can tell you I still had to supplement the bricks for the sides and backs significantly from my own collection. So even though you would drop $340 to modularize this, you're going to end up with just a lot of extra pieces, which doesn't strike me as all that efficient if you're looking for just a modular building. Of course, getting 2 sets would be able to get a lot of pieces that you can add for future mocks, but wouldn't necessarily work for this one. Perhaps a better solution would be to keep some of the key design elements that we'll talk about in just a moment and then customize the colors. If you don't like pink or nougat, that's fine. Replace them with something else. Now, the key here is that some pieces are only going to be available in certain colors. For instance, take a look at these curved window elements in this pink and fleshy colored building. This window element is available in a handful of colors from other sets, including black, reddish brown, and white. There are some other colors that it comes in, but they're in only like 1 or 2 sets, and that makes it more expensive. So it is possible to replace some parts. The key with this, though, is making sure that you pick colors that work with the other buildings that are in the set. So if you replace the pink and fleshy colors but put it next to a mint green building or a other shaded green building, you want to make sure it looks good next to those. In the end, if you end up replacing all of the key colors from the set, you're going to be spending a lot of money on pieces. Another solution is to turn the design of one building into a 16-wide modular and customize your own colors, which would be more affordable, as you wouldn't actually have to buy this set at all. And the instructions are available starting in January, so this might be the best solution if you like the look of this building. So of the first two requirements, this one is potentially going to pose some significant problems. Now, we were able to overcome this with the Downtown Flower and Design stores. We enjoyed the final product, but so far I'm not entirely sold on this one. But there is one requirement left to go. Now, there is a lot to like here in terms of the exterior details, and while none of the building techniques jump out to me as being revolutionary, they are really good, and the subtle details count for making this building look good as a modular building. The Cupcake Shop uses a simple but effective snot technique by stacking 1x1 snot bricks and placing 1x1 tiles or cheese slopes on them. Those cheese slopes placed to the right of the door add some depth to the build. The little terrace on top of the Cupcake Shop reminds me of the small garden atop the pizza shop in the Jazz Club set. It's not too complicated, but it is a fantastic detail and adds height to the shortest part of the set. The Pottery Shop and Green Apartment section also has some really nice details. For instance, there's the staircase that leads up to the apartment, which is something we don't see a lot in front of Lego buildings. In the modular line, outdoor staircases tend to be on the side of the set, running away from the street, like in the Tudor Corner, Parisian Restaurant, or Downtown Diner. The use of lampposts and pillars was copied really from the Downtown Flower and Design stores, so it's not unprecedented, but it still is a nice touch. Even the use of candles as part of a window frame isn't all that unique. The Natural History Museum, Tudor Corner, and Bookshop use them, but it's still a classy technique. The 3 wide windows are really nice here, as I believe these are some new pieces. There's also a half stud offset that you can see here, which again, not revolutionary, but adds some nice texture and depth to the facade. Note the 1x3 jumper plate above those windows that allows you to place a 2x3 plate on top of it and then connect everything to the pieces above to provide strength and stability to the build. The laundromat and pink apartment also has some nice details, like the garage door to close the business. The corner garage is the only modular so far to include a door like this. The use of minifig heads as part of the railing is a really cool touch and is something I could see being used in a Ninjago City set one day. The snot work at the top, where you have 2 mudguards sandwiched together around a 1x2 transparent brick, is a detail worthy of a modular building and reminds me of what we see in the Downtown Diner. All told, there's a lot of potential here when it comes to modularizing the Heartlake City apartments and stores. But there are 2 things that are really holding me up from taking the plunge. The first is the color scheme. I mentioned earlier that these colors don't really work well in my modular city, so I'm not really sure I want to do that, even though there are some really cool exterior details. The second reason is cost. You buy the set for $170, and then if you want to completely modularize it, fully enclose it, add a little bit of additional interior detailing, you're probably gonna have to pour in another $130, $150, because that's how much it costs to get bricks, the base plates, maybe some sidewalk pieces, some interior pieces. All of that adds up. It's a lot to put into a set, which takes the price from $170 for the set to over $300. And honestly, I'm not sure it's really worth that kind of expenditure, although I'm sure that there are some people who can afford to do that. Personally, I'm intrigued by this, but not ready to go there yet, because this set isn't going to be on sale for a while. Rather, I'm interested in waiting for the Castle Bed and Breakfast to go on sale, picking up a couple copies of those and modularizing that. That's something I looked at doing last summer, didn't get around to doing, but might be on my wish list this year. And it's a great way to add a building to the modular city that is going to look fantastic. What do you think about modularizing this? Are you gonna try to do that? Comment down below. As always, thanks for watching, and remember, keep building together.